from afar, but now she's on this show, is going to be speaking to us what the Lord has done for her, how she has forsaken her father's religion. We call this show Forsaking My Father's Religion because I wrote a book called Forsaking My Father's Religion. In this story, I share my walk out of Islam to the glorious kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ. If you would like a copy of this book, it is absolutely free of charge. It is on our website. You can go to iranchristians.org, iranchristians.org with an S at the end, iranchristians.org. There is a tab called Free Book. If you fill the form, if you live in America, I'll be glad to send you a hard copy absolutely free of charge. And if you are outside of America, the book has been translated to 8 different languages. I'll be glad to send it to you even in your mother tongue, absolutely free of charge. Before we go to the story of how Annie has forsaken her father's religion, I would like to tell you we have these coins that we use. Let me see if yes, it got focused. These coins that we use that for evangelism and tracts and all that, we have them in Arabic, English, and Spanish. And if you would like them, and if you have Muslims around you, which is very prevalent these days all around America, I'm able to send you some. And if you want, you just write me on the contact list on the website, and I'll be send you some that you could evangelize these Muslims, and you help them to get them out of the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of his beloved Son. But Annie, I'm just honored to have you today on this show, and I can't wait to hear your story. So I'll keep quiet. Please tell us where you come from, what is your story, and how was your life as a Muslim?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on your wonderful platform. I have followed your work. As you mentioned, we've known each other for a while. The message you are spreading is absolutely wonderful. It might sometimes be mistranslated, but I have personally received a lot of love and freedom messages from your platform. So thank you for sharing your platform with me. And I let me start here. Aynaz Anni Cyrus, born and raised in Islamic Republic of Iran. And I know some call it Iran, some call it Iran. I always call it Islamic Republic of Iran because I was born after the Islamic Revolution. So I was born in the heart of the Sharia obeying written constitution of Iran. Um, and to top it, my father was a sheikh, and my mother was a teacher of Quran. So outside was Islam, inside was Islam, in the bedroom was Islam, the kitchen was Sharia, and all of it. Um, I technically never became a Muslim because when I was 9 years old and I had to go through Jashn or the requirement day when you become an adult woman under Sharia, including in Iran, I didn't say the Shahada in the room where all the kids, my classmates, were standing. I didn't say it, but as you know better, it doesn't matter. They stamped me a Muslim, so I had to become a good obeying Muslim woman. I won't get to too much details because I'm guessing your audience is already familiar with a lot of terms I use, but please feel free to stop me and ask me to elaborate if you need me
I would
to.
love you to elaborate. Tell us what is Jashn Taklif, which is, and why is it at age 9 under the Sharia of Islam for the girls and not for the boys?
Sure. So Jashn Taklif, it's a day across the country, all Islamic countries, including Iran, across the country, once a year, there's a day that's picked by them, the government and the regime and the schools, where every single 9 years old girl is gonna have to attend this celebration where you wear the uniform given some ours, for example, was all white burqa, uh, a red flower looking head tail on it. You wear that, you go to the ceremony, and first the dean of a school comes up and talks, and then after that, a local imam will come on a stage and tell you why you're here. Mine said as followed. After reading Quran, after praising Mohamad, after the 12 imams and all that, basically said, you are now officially an adult woman. You are responsible for your actions. You will face consequences for your actions or rewards for your action as a full adult woman under Sharia if your male guardian decide you can handle being a wife of someone, you will become the wife of someone.
And why is it 9 years old? It's not, for example, 13 or 15 or 31. Why it's nine?
Why not 18 internationally, right? Well,
Exactly.
the reason it's 9 is because Muhammad, the prophet of Islam,
The self-claimed prophet of Islam.
well, I would let's remove all
Okay,
filters.
sure.
The pedophile of
Oh
Islam
gosh.
had 11 wives all at
Mhm.
once. His very favorite one was named Aisha. Aisha was 6 years old when Muhammad picked her to be his wife. But he did not consummate the marriage. He technically didn't rape this little girl until she turned 9.
9 years old. That's right.
From there, every girl who is labeled a Muslim shall pay the price for Muhammad's pedophilia.
Pretty much. And then I want to mention one thing because it's so important. And why is it 9 years old? Why this never will, Islam cannot be reformed? Let me explain this to our audience. Since Muhammad is the self-claimed prophet of Islam, is the perfect example for all the Muslims across all cultures, nations, languages to follow. He is the example to follow because he consummated the marriage with Aisha. They call him the Ummul Mu'mineen, the mother of all religious Muslims. Because he consummated the marriage, had sex with a 9 years old, that became the example for all of Muslim world from every language, every country, doesn't matter where it is. When you are a 9 year old, because Muhammad did it, now that's our example. We'll do it even in 2024. And this will be never reformed. There is no outcry for anybody, no matter where. So you're 9 years old, Anni. Now you're an adult according to Sharia of Islam. They make you to wear this white dress, which is a type of ready for bridal, ready for marriage type of a dress. It's like you are now you're having your wedding. They're preparing you for that. And if your father, your brother, your male guardian decides that it's ready for Anni to leave a school, second grade, leave a school and marry a 54-year-old when Muhammad was when he married Aisha, now you're ready to go. So
Correct.
tell us what happened after this. So now you become an adult, 9 years old, in under the Sharia of Islam in Islamic regime of Iran, and then what happened after that? How's life?
So the very first thing was, of course, they tell you you're an adult woman, you're responsible for your actions, and you face consequences. It doesn't click until you actually do. For example, you're walking on the street, going from school with your friends home, and you love music, so you start whispering, and then before you know it, you're louder than you should as a woman in society, and morality police stops you. Literally, you just see a storm of morality police, female officers pulling you aside and putting you in handcuffs. You're like, what did I do? You're singing publicly. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, sorry doesn't cut it. They dragged us to detention center. They held us, contacted our parents. The parents had to come. Well, your parent, my parent in this case, the Quran teacher and the sheikh, right? Now, thankfully, the sheikh wasn't accessible as easily because he decided to divorce my mother because my mother wasn't good enough of a Muslim wife. But the sheikh still held full guardianship of mine. So when there was situations like this, they had no choice but to contact the father and say, "You're gonna come and get your daughter out of detention center, prison cell, wherever she's at." So my father would have his own separate punishment for me as he saw fit, which his favorite was normally a belt and lashing. The detention center would have different circumstances. I was arrested from the day I became a full adult woman until the day I leave Iran, which was when I was 15. I was arrested for having nail polish on. I was arrested for singing publicly. I was arrested for sitting in front passenger seat of a cab. I was arrested for attending a party where boys and girls were all dancing. That's it. There were no drugs, there was no smoking, there was no drinking, just dancing. Same room, that's all. I was arrested for walking alone past curfew of Sharia not parents. This wasn't after dark, and on and on.
So pretty much, as a teenager, you're trying to live your life, and whatever you do, it is against the Islamic Sharia law. And of course, in a country that Sharia is unforced, is the law of the land, they have the Sharia police to enforce the codes of Islam. So whatever you do as a woman, God forbid if you to remove your veil. You remember what they have done to Mahsa Amini. They killed a 21-year-old because the veil wasn't covering her hair completely. So if you not dressed as a good, obedient Muslim girl, if your nail is polished, if you sit in front of a taxi instead of in the back, because women always have to sit in the back or pray in the back of the mosque. It's always, it's Islam is so equal that the woman is always in the back. Muhammad freed all the Muslim, of course. That is a joke I'm trying to make, but now you're breaking every rule of the Sharia. So you're a rebellious, if you would call it, a Muslim woman or a Muslim teenager, not a woman, Muslim teenager, and you get arrested. You keep getting arrested, and they take you in. Parents come, and your dad is ready to abuse you and beat you up for the sake of Islam and Allah.
Absolutely. And for the sake of his reputation, mind you, he's a sheikh. Like people literally line at his door. There's a line to meet to see Sheikh Reza to get fatwas and orders and judgments and some sort of which verse of Quran do I read to get pregnant? Which one do I read to zikr? I don't know what is zikr in English, to be honest. I always called it
Chanting,
wudu,
chanting,
chanting. There were long
same thing.
lines.
Yep.
So his reputation is in danger. Now the sheikh's daughter is at detention center in prison and being lashed. I literally, for that front seat passenger scenario, I was sentenced to 75 lashes. My grandmother paid for 50 of them and I served 25 of them. I was about 11, barely 12 at that point. I was literally just a simple, normal, healthy teenager by definition of here, America. So the father had to try to get me under control before I would ruin his reputation altogether.
Wow.
But he couldn't. By nature, I love dancing. I love music is my language. Music got me through a lot of tough times. So what does he do? He turned me into somebody else's problem. He decided
Oh
that's
my
it.
goodness. Yep. That's it.
You're going to be someone else's problem, somebody else who can deal with you better than I do. And next day, literally, I go with my father to this business office, this building somewhere in Tehran. We were in Karaj, we weren't even in Tehran. He takes me there. We walk in. There's a big table with 8 seats. I sit next to the father. A man sits on the head. Another man sits in front of my father. Negotiation has started. I am literally giving you the picture that I walked into. Okay, here's what we do. You're going to give me $50. The exchange was dollar amount, not real of Iran. So two 20s and a 10 was put on the table. About a month of his personal opium was on the table. He turned to me and said, "You're going to marry this guy."
Wow. So the man paid a dowry to your dad. Paid. Let me correct it. Not use Islamic or Middle Eastern terminology. So the man act. Let me put it this way: your father sold you to this man to get rid of you because you caused him so much problems.
Yes.
How old were you?
I was 13 at this point.
Wow. Wow. Just turned to be a teenager. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
His understanding was, of course, I fight back. Not fight back physically yet, but I fight back verbally. But why? And he said, because I said so. I'm like, yeah, but why are you saying this? Why? He was like, we'll talk about it when we leave. We left. We get in a cab. And he explains to me, I cannot kill you while trying to fix you, but your husband can.
Wow.
He's going to either fix you or he's going to kill you and set my reputation back on track.
Wow.
And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You think you have the authority to do that? He grabs his pocket Quran out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
He's like, of course I do. We're going. Chapter 4, the woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, boom. Verse 3, read, read.
Yeah.
If a male guardian is attracted to a girl of, I'm sorry, what is the underage girl called in English? It's not an orphan.
Pub-
No,
um, pubescent, I think that's the terminology.
I think.
Yeah.
Due to her beauty or wealth,
Mm-hmm.
if he can afford to pay the right amount for her, he can have.
Prepubescent. That's the term. Prepubescent.
There you
Mm-hmm.
go.
Yeah.
And he shows me the verse and said,
Wow.
they're
Out of the
paying.
Quran, he shows you this is your payment, and you're done. You can't rebel against it. We're under the Sharia of Islam. This country is ruled by the Quran, the law of Islam, and you're off to go. And this is your dad.
That's it. That's my father.
Unbelievable.
Justifying his decision and his authority with that
Yes.
verse
Yes.
in the Quran. And that is the first time in my whole life I realized it is time for me to read this thing back to front, front to back, all of it, because what else is in there?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
then, of course, they do hand me over to this man who now owns me, genuinely owns me because he paid for me. For a year and a half, if it wasn't beating, it was raping. If it wasn't raping, it was beating. If it wasn't both at the same time, he wasn't home. And when I tried to go to a Sharia court while bleeding from my lip and bruised and my shoulder completely out of place and begged for a divorce, the judge looked me in the eye and said, well, young lady, maybe you should start listening to your husband
Yep.
so he doesn't have to beat you up. Now go home before he finds out.
Wow.
The judge did me a favor by sending me home without telling my husband because just going to court trying to get a divorce would get me in bigger trouble.
Exactly. Exactly. In chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran says that if you're not obedient as a wife to a Muslim, he's totally allowed, he's totally permitted, he's totally encouraged to beat the wife up to the obedience. It's unbelievable religion. So,
Well, if I could just add there is a very, very tiny word in there in that verse in Arabic that even in Farsi it has been properly translated, even in English. There's a very key word there. It doesn't say if your wife is not obedient.
fear,
It's
if you fear
if you
disobedience,
if you fear you just need to feel like she's about to
yeah, about
disobey you. That's
exactly,
all the grounds you need. And
exactly.
that's why, for example, in Iran, to this day, working on cases in Iran through my organization, we witness men who get away with beating, killing, beheading daughters, wives, mothers, nieces by just saying, I knew she was going to do something. And they get a free pass.
Yeah, yeah. That's a sad story. So, Aynaz, Annie, tell us, you growing up in this horrific situation. Of course, this is right after the revolution of Iran. The Ayatollah comes in power, enforces the Sharia code down the throat of the Persians, and then you, as a teenage girl, you're going through this horrific situation. What were you thinking? What were you thinking about God? What were you thinking about Allah, the Prophet of Islam, this Quran? When you start reading the Quran, what happened? Did you
Well,
help to become a good Muslim, or what?
so let me tell you the reason I didn't say the Shahada originally at age 9. If I could refer to the minute or two before we start the stream, was you said a prayer before we come on air. And you started it with few phrases in English. You switched 2 sentences to Farsi and you went back to English again. That was the reason I didn't say the Shahada because I wasn't sure what I'm getting into. As they were prepping me for this day, as they're getting me ready to learn how to do my prayer wash up, because after that day, you now have to do all of your religious duties too, meaning 5 times a day prayer, do your fasting during the Ramadan, all of that. As they were prepping me this question pops in my head and I ask it. I ask my father, and I'm like, quick question. So why is it that I have to learn my prayer and azan or call to prayer in Arabic? If this guy created me, shouldn't he be bilingual, not me? Of course, the answer was I got beat up, and the answer was don't you ever question Allah again. But at that age, my little tiny brain was thinking, wait, why do I have to do everything Arabic for this creator of mine? When how am I smarter than him?
Yeah.
So that's when the first red flag went on in my head of wait a minute, something is off.
Yeah.
Then move forward. There is the detention centers and the lashing and the punishments, and then the being forced in somebody else's arms for a set price. Now let's go read the Quran. The more I read the Quran, the more I started to realize I am in a cult that worships Satan.
Yep.
Then I started focusing on verses of Quran that Allah describes himself. And I'm like, wow, this guy is openly telling me he's Satan. He's the greatest of the deceivers.
Yep.
That is not God. That's where I was going. And of course, I should say I did not have the courage or the bravery at that point to say any of this. I am wearing my hijab outdoor. If I ever got to go outdoor, I am keeping my head down. I am doing the whole 5 times a day. You get dizzy from bending over, down, up to do your prayer. I did all of it. So nobody would know until come the day where my grandmother, rest in peace, my mother's mother, she decided to sell what she had that people didn't see, gold, I don't know, dollar, whatever she had behind the scenes so it wouldn't be noticeable, and hires smugglers to smuggle me out of the country.
Wow. Wow.
She literally told me I had less than 40 minutes from the moment I was informed what's happening until I walked out of her house. She woke me up in the middle of the night and said, here's a backpack, you're going. I'm like, where am I going? It's like, somewhere that you won't end up dead because these people think you are nothing but a property. You're leaving. You'll never look back. I don't care what happens. You move forward. You remember where you're coming from, but you move forward. There is something better out there, and you're going to go find it. That's actually why the first show I ever started in America, the title of the show is The Unknown. I genuinely experienced the unknown at age 15. I'm 15 at this point, where I walk out of her house, go down the street, find a car she gave me the information on, get in it. The rest, of course,
So
history.
she literally rescued you out of the miserable situation at the hand of the Muslim man in a Muslim country, in your country that you were stuck in. So your grandma came and rescued you out of that.
She rescued me
Wow.
from literally, she rescued me from death.
Wow. Wow. And then, you quoted actually one of my mom's favorite verses of the Quran, chapter 3, verse 54 of the Quran. وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ اللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. He is the greatest of the deceivers. Whenever my mom lied, and then as kids we're like, Mom, this is not what happening. This is not truth. And then she would say, Allahu khairul makirin. Allah is the greatest of the deceivers, the chief of the deceivers. So that's in chapter 3, verse 54 of the Quran. So, Annie, I just want to, now you're reading this Quran and you're realizing this cannot be, this religion, this book, this Islam cannot be from God, but at the same time, you cannot retaliate. You cannot just say, "Hey, man, I'm gonna not be a Muslim." You just can't throw this book off. Why is that? Why can't she be? Why couldn't she say to your husband, to your father, "I am denouncing Islam today in this country of Iran under Sharia"? Why couldn't you do that?
Well, technically, by definition of word, I could, but then I would be dead.
That's right.
I didn't. I chose not to do it because I wanted to try and, leave life longer than 15 years
Yeah,
or be alive as a more proper, because I wasn't living life. I was just alive.
that's right.
But if I would do that, like many who have,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even make it to cross the street. Again, father or husband would immediately have the authority
Yep.
to behead me right there and then and say, she turned her back on Islam.
Islam.
That's the
She's a traitor.
punishment.
She betrayed. She's an apostate. And under the Islamic law, the beautiful, peaceful, wonderful Islamic law that we just need to, President Biden said that we need more of it in America. Under that beautiful law, apostasy is punishable by death. If you denounce Islam publicly, say, I'm I'm done with this religion. I'm not a Muslim. I am something other than this religion that I was birthed in. I was born into. I'm something else. This is apostasy. You will never end up in a court. That is the truth. You will never end up. You just need two witnesses and you are killed on the spot. And if they kill you without witnesses, they say, hey, these are the proofs. She or he denounced Islam, became an apostate, and the Quran absolutely sanctions the killing of the apostates, and that is the truth about Islam. So, Annie, now your grandma rescues you out of this your situation. You're out of Iran. You're still a Muslim by name, right? Because you're born into it. They recite the Shahada in your ear when you were born, and then boom, Aynaz is Muslim, and Aynaz reading Islam, but this cannot be from a holy God or the true God, or this cannot be from heaven. This thing is totally jacked and made up. What happened after that?
So I was smuggled to Turkey, where I spent my refugee time, and I'm very proud to say I did not jump over the border. I waited my legal term. I came to America when I received a package of Welcome to the United States of America from the embassy in Istanbul, Turkey, and a ticket that later I paid back for. I want everybody to know that because that's one of the most amazing thing in my life, that I respected the law of this land. So one day I could call it home. I went to Turkey, went to UN. The case was a little unusual. As you can imagine, I'm an underage girl with no guardian, all by myself. UN didn't even know how to start this, but they finally figured it out. And I started, actually, amazingly, I started hanging out with more refugees in Turkey. I had 9 roommates at some point. It was me and 9 other people trying to survive, so cost would be less in the same house. And all 9 of my roommates were Baha'is.
Wow.
And at that point, I start hearing their life in Iran, because at that point, I think I'm the only one, right? Poor me, I suffered. That's it. And then I start talking to these Baha'i roommates who one by one tell me why they're there, what happened to their fathers, what happened to their grandfathers, to their mothers, how they had to escape through freezing season of Bazargan border between Iran and Turkey, and how they lost toes to get to Turkey because the government find out they're Baha'is and now they want them dead. Um, and that's where I started realizing, okay, so in a very strange way, I feel better about myself, right? Because I'm not the only one who's being basically, at, I'm not the only one who's hating this scenario. So and also I started learning about their faith. I'm no expert in Baha'i faith, don't get me wrong, but I start hearing about their do's and don'ts, and I'm like, okay, so at that point, not all religion are evil, because I stepped out of my grandmother's house with the belief of all religions are evil. That's the mindset. My Baha'i roommates, with their faith, with their behavior, kind, hard actions, they protection they provided this little girl back then, because they were all guys, showed me that okay, maybe not all religions are, evil. So that's where my mindset went from there. So I officially became an ex-Muslim. I verbalize, as someone would say, so you're a Muslim? I'm like, no. So I even though in Turkey there's still that bit of possibility of trouble, but I built the courage to say I'm not a Muslim. And they would ask, then what are you? I'm like, I get back to you on that, because at this point I don't know what I am. I still believe in a God, not Baha'ism, not Zoroastrianism, very much not familiar with Christianity whatsoever at that point. I have had zero knowledge of. Definitely just not a Muslim. And fast forward until I came to America when I was 18. Less than 9 months after I arrived, I received a call that your father passed away. And I'm like, how? They're like, well, he went to sleep and he didn't wake up. I hung up the phone. I said, God doesn't exist. I'm done. This man cannot die peacefully. I'm done. And I went right down the path of atheism. I chose atheism over any belief of any higher power or God or any of that. For a long time, I want to say probably a year and a half or so, I considered myself an atheist until I studied atheism. And then I'm like, no, my logic could not cope with the atheism scenario. And went back to the lost soul. I called myself for a long time, I'm a lost soul. I'm trying. I don't know where I'm going with it. And gradually I started, doing certain producing and programming with, for example, Dr. Jamie Glazov, my mentor, my hero, who is a Christian. And he kept, between lines, he would like, you do act like a Christian, even though you refuse to say you are one. I'm like, no, I'm not a Christian. So he opened this conversation with me. He bought me a couple of books, gifted them to me, and I started reading them. I did. And I started feeling the presence of Lord. And I ran. I refused him and I ran. I'm like, I will not obey you. You will not exist. I will stay lost, preferably than anything else. And not to drag this on, in 2017, I was giving a speech at a church, a stone church in Chicago, on a stage. And I was giving my, a story of what happened to me and why we need to stop Islamization in America. And I got to the part of um, where my father sold me. It's very important for me to always say what my price was. $50. That's what your daughter's worth to you, right? And I have healed from a lot of my wounds, but to be honest, that one has not been healed yet, knowing what my price was for him. Anyhow, and when I got to that point, always and always, I would get this, heat on my face and anger would come up. You get angry because you're about to admit how much you are not worth to your father. It's not an easy thing to say. As I got there, and I want to mention this if you don't mind, this moment was captured on video because they were filming the speech. And when this video was posted on YouTube, within 48 hours, this video received 1.5 million views within 48 hours. And the moment one of my friends called me, he's like, your first viral video. I said, I need to tell you something. She's like, did you pay for views? I'm like, no, I didn't pay for views, but I don't think it was my video. She's like, then what do you think it was? I said, I think it was Lord. She's like, whoa, repeat. Now, this person, by the way, has gone very far with me, trying to help me see the light. And that moment, I paused and I felt a hand, actual physical hand, holding my heart inside and calming it down. And through my left ear, and I'll tell you why this is important, I heard the following: don't you worry, your heavenly Father loves you. Why is the left ear important? One of my childhood injuries is I am deaf on my right ear, only 7% hearing. He even made sure to whisper it at the good ear so I would hear it clearly. And that was the moment I stopped running from him. I just couldn't run anymore. I had no reason to run and millions of reasons to stop and listen.
Wow. 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 So, reading Islam and learning about Islam turned you off. Living as a Muslim turned you off. And now you're getting exposed outside of Iran in the country of Turkey. You're seeking asylum. And then you're living with among other sects or religions or other practices. So, and then you're seeing that. So you've been exposed to things that it wasn't available to you in Iran. I just want to, you bring this to us. This is an important point of, I think, your testimony. When you lived in Iran, in that situation, did you ever heard about the existence of Christians, or what did you know about Christianity, generally speaking, before your encounter with God?
Well, from stories of people I knew, Christians exist. I would hear like, oh, such and such is Masihi, which would means Christian. Uh, my knowledge of Christ, Jesus, was what I learned in the Quran. He was nothing but a prophet of Islam. And that's why I started running from him when he came to me. Originally, a few years ago, I'm like, oh, no, I know who you are.
Yeah.
No, I know who you are. You work for the same Allah. So I'm happy today that I know better, but unfortunately, there was a time that my understanding of Christ, Jesus, was what you read in the Quran.
So, since you're a prophet of Islam, therefore, I don't want to hear the message. Wow, that is great. That's a great point. So, folks, if you hear that, that's one of our responsibilities as believers who know who the true Christ is, to introduce him correctly to Muslims. Any, I do a trip. I travel quite a bit to Middle East, and we visit with the Iranians on the streets, and we give them a New Testament, and then we ask him in this very question that I asked you: do you know who Christ is, or have you heard about Christianity, or do you know what Jesus has done for you? These are simple startup questions that we ask. I am telling you, something really amazing is happening in Iran. Probably you're aware of it. You and I'm born in '84, right in the middle of chaos and war, and tapes on the X tape windows. That's what I remember from my childhood. My uncle died in war, so we were family of martyrs. If you search my uncle's name right now on Google, Abul Qasim Faridi, you see this big mural. He was one of these leaders of these voluntarily Basij type of people that they joined the forces and then died. So I remember those things growing up. So I never heard about Christianity, or whenever I heard something about Christianity, it was always negative. You're like, these are defiled people, najis, unclean people. Allah has misguided them. It's amazing. Allah will create a religion or create a prophet and then send them to misguide people. But that's Islam. So it's always us Muslims and the outsiders, the infidel, the non-Muslims that we look down upon. So never heard anything good about it. So now these days, when we go on the streets, we ask people, Iranians, what do you know about Christianity, or what do you know about Jesus, or any of that? And of course, you get all sorts of weird answers. Of course, if you could imagine, well, you go to a church and light up a candle, and that has good deeds, or savab dare. You put it on, and then we get this conversation. But when we correct them, we present to them that God wants to have a relationship with you through His Son. I mean, this is in August. In 5 days' time, 137 Iranians gave their heart to the Lord. It is such a miraculous thing that is happening among Iranians. They're turning away by droves. I mean, they have turned off. I don't know if you remember when the news came out, end of last year and the beginning of this year, that out of the 75,000 mosques inside Iran, 50,000 mosques, it's out of business. They can't keep up. The
Yes.
force hasn't worked. The bribery hasn't worked. Nothing has worked with the Iranian people. They just looked at Islam, just you and I, as Iranians, almost similar age. We looked at Islam and we said, this cannot be from God. This religion that does this to man or to woman, this cannot be from God. Therefore, we became discontent, disillusioned. So many Iranians, they say, we hate Islam, we hate God. Islam has made Iranian people to hate God. It's amazing. That's a miracle by itself. And now they're open. So when you get to talk to them about Christianity or Christ or the love of God, the respect that God has for the true God of the Bible, how much love He has for the women, for the men, for the life. of people for nature and everything else. People, Iranian people are really open. We call them the Persians, right? Because Iran is, you're like, oh, Islamic regime of Iran. I don't want to be anything Iranian. I'm Persian. If you ask them, that's what they say. So tell us, what all do you are you involved in these days as a Christian?
I will most certainly, but if I could just add something to what you said. Yes, aside the fact that the mosques are going out of business, the underground movements of Iranian pastors inside Iran, we need to acknowledge it. Bravely knowing any of them who's being captured is immediately hung,
Yep. Yep.
but they can't keep up with catching them. For one pastor they arrest, four more start next day.
Amen.
It's so amazing that literally every time they try to pretend like, oh, there is no Christianity movement in Iran, or Iranians are all, loving Sharia, it's like more and more you see that there. I have found more than 12 Farsi language digital Bibles available without needing a filter pass to Iranian devices.
Yep.
That's amazing. So just wanted to add that on the positive note to your note. Now, Live Up to Freedom, we originally started it unofficially in 2008, 2009. And the main focus at that point, because of course it was way before I was saved myself, the focus was to rescue as many people as we can. So we started as a rescue organization. And I'm very proud to say, praise the Lord, to this day, we have had 21 rescue cases successfully done, from child brides to political prisoners to women under oppression from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey itself, Bosnia, California. We have received cases. Of course, there's a lot of filtration. We need to make sure it's not a trap. As you know, they will trap those like me and you if they can. And we're sending rescue teams. All the funding is through the organization because we are not a nonprofit organization. Therefore, we don't have any funding. And that was the original mission, which is still part of the organization. And then gradually in 2011, I started appearing here and there to talk. From 2015, I went public. Uh, Again, God's plan. Mr. Obama, the president of the time, went and gave a speech at a mosque and said, "Let me be clear, Islam is part of America."
Yeah.
Yours truly could not put up with that. So I did a video and I explained that Islam cannot be part of anything. It will start as being part of it, and then it will consume it and it will become it. So let me be clear, my fellow Americans, fight or get your hijab, ladies, and your beards ready, gentlemen. That video, again, by grace of God, went viral. Uh, I started getting asked questions. What happened? Who are you? Where do you come from? How do you know this is happening? So part of Live Up to Freedom became the educational videos I do, where sadly I dissect the Quran. I teach them what's inside the Quran. I read the verses, I explain them, I attach them and connect them to the Hadith and the Sirah and all that. And then after 2017, when I was saved, I added a new chapter where I specifically on the speeches, on gatherings, on videos, on anywhere I can, I emphasize on the description of Jesus in Islam versus the real Jesus that I now have in my life. That is basically, one of the biggest. I have had some very small number of Muslims who have reached out telling, when you told me to go read it, either from the chapters about women, chapters about children, chapters about Jesus,
Yeah.
and they have left Islam. Um, I can't really say if they have give their life to Christ, but I know they have at least walked away from the darkness. So that's
You
where
have.
we
We
are.
all have to start someplace, Annie.
And here's what I always say. I That very video that I mentioned, that I was saved on that video. Is that okay if I give the name of the video?
Please, of
Okay.
course, please.
So if you look up Anni Cyrus solution to stop Islam, that's the video. Um, and I that's the solution to stop Islam. first step is to have them read their own book.
Yes. Yeah.
When they are in pitch dark, introduce them to the light we know as Jesus Christ. That is the way to do it. We can preach, we can explain, but if they are not like me, if they're not aware on how much of a darkness their life is in, they won't see the light as bright as it is. So my solution always, like, if you are a Muslim, please pick up your Quran, read it, all of it, word by word of it, and then learn about the order of revelation, because chapter 5 overwrites anything else that's been said before that about non-Muslims. Chapter 5 is the last one. So
Mhm.
abrogation, I teach about that. So that's how I connect to my Muslim audience.
Yeah. I think one of the most important thing that is happening in our time, which has never happened in any time in the history of mankind, never, it has never happened, that we have access to internet, and on our cell phones we can do research individually. Islam is falling apart before our eyes just because of what I said. Imagine if you're in Iran and then you have some questions about Islam. Where do you want to go? You have to go to the mosque or to school or to your parents. Everybody's Muslim. So immediately you will get persecuted. Immediately. And the fear of control, the fear of persecution, the fear of I'm going to lose my life, even for the sake of asking question, you will stop doing it. But now with the phones, no matter where you go in the world, and the access to the internet, which accesses you outside of this uh, circle that you're caught in, without you asking your imam or you asking your dad or grandpa or whoever, you just on your phone you research something. And I believe with all of my heart that's why the left wants to control everything, because they don't want people have to access free internet or free information, because everything free scares them. So these Muslims that they never had access to, for example, critical thinking, or somebody sits down, criticizes Islam in their language. They never had access to it. Now they do, but separate from public. So they're researching, they're looking at it, they're looking like, how could God sanction marrying as 6 years old? What kind of God is this? You know, it's
Well,
scientifically is
if I
wrong.
could, I'm so
Please.
sorry. I do want to make sure we understand. In Islam, based on Hadith, Sirah, and the Quran itself, you are allowed to marry a girl the moment she's born. You're just not allowed to consummate the marriage until they're
Yes.
9. There is no minimum
Nope.
available. And it happens even in Iran. The baby girl is born as soon as she's 1 year old. They're
They gave
promised.
him over. Absolutely. Even to the first cousins. That's
Sadly.
always the thing.
Mhm.
The first cousin gets the girl, if it's a boy or girl. Oh, their name has been written in Allah's paradise or whatever.
Yes, they have. But I just wanted to mention, it's not even a 6-year-old. How can this a law sanction? How do you even fall in love with a baby? How sick is that?
It is very sick. Islam is a very sick religion and has nothing compatible with the Western Judeo-Christian values. It never does. You will never find these two things work together. If it works in England, it will work here, and you see how's that working for the Great Britain? Do you see? Look at it now. So, going back to the point I was trying to make, so there's something really amazing is happening, that Muslims looking at Islam separated from public in their individual private times, and they're reading it. They're reading the Quran, the Hadith, the Sirah in their own languages, in their mother tongues, not in Arabic. It's Satan is so crafty in this thing. They encourage Muslims, no matter where they come from. 87% of the Muslim world, Annie, you know this, that they do not speak Arabic, so they don't have access to what it says. But now in our time, it's changing. You have in English, in Farsi, Turkish, whatever language. So you read it, you're like, no, this cannot be God. So they're turning away from Islam. This tsunami of ex-Muslim is happening in front of us, but that is the start point. They need to hear about Christianity, Christ, the sacrifice, the redemption of God. Because if you die an ex-Muslim, you will burn in hell. But if you die as an ex-Muslim Christian, you have eternal life and life abundant. So, Annie, you tell us about your show on YouTube. Tell us about your Facebook, how people get a hold of you.
Definitely. So the easiest way to get to all of my platform is just go to my website. It's liveuptofreedom.com. That's liveuptofreedom.com. All of my social media links are up on the top. Also, all of the videos are embedded inside the website, and you have access pretty much all things me are on that website, liveuptofreedom.com. Our newsletter is free, so feel free to sign up to our newsletter. I don't jam your inbox. I send one email out every week with update of the week, unless there's an emergency or a breaking news. Otherwise, liveuptofreedom.com is the best place to find me. And I am still on YouTube. Amazingly, I am still on
Yeah, it's a
YouTube.
miracle by itself, exactly. And then, if you love controversy, go to Live Up to Freedom, live up to freedom.com. Is that correct? And of
Yes.
course, the link is in the description of this video. Make sure you check out my sister Annie's program YouTube channel, as long as she's on YouTube. Other than that, you have to find her on Rumble or other places. But thank God, so far so good. She's been there. And Annie, do you have any closing thoughts? And how would you encourage, if there are any Muslims are watching, any Christians are watching, how would you encourage them for the closing thoughts?
Let me start here. A few years ago, I thought of a sentence to describe Islam the best I can in the least negative way. So I'm gonna start there. To be a human, you need to be free from Islam. Every aspect of your humanity will be stripped away from you if you entertain the idea of self proclaiming Islam as the religion of anything, because Islam is not a religion. We can describe that part of it with many different words, but as a human rights activist, as a humanitarian mindset, that has amplified by millions of more care points in my life since I have been saved. I am asking you to look into the lack of rights, lack of respect, including self respect, when it comes to Sharia and Islam. If you are a Muslim, read the Quran. And then I want you to pick up the biography of Muhammad and read it. And when you're done with that, if you're comfortable staying a Muslim, may the real God save you. If you come to a point I did, we're here. We won't judge. We will love you just like we would love our sisters and brothers. Reach out, ask questions. We all ask questions. You know what's the most beautiful thing about Christianity? The most beautiful thing about Jesus is he allowed me to ask questions and he allowed me to have doubts without punishing me. You don't find that anywhere else. Nowhere else do you find such an ability to be rattled and be doubtful. And he will himself show you the right way and he will himself guide you to that certainty again. If you are a fellow Christian, there is a difference between being nice and being kind. We will be kind to our Muslim neighbors and friends, but we cannot afford to be nice to the Islamist jihadists who are out there to kill us. So learn the difference. To those of you who are still going through the limbo, not knowing where you're going with your life, trust me, I've been there. Hang tough. He'll find you, he'll reach you, and he'll save you. And we will keep praying for all of you out there who are still seeking him.
First, First and foremost, Annie, thank you so very much for being here, sharing your story, being open to our audience. And I know some parts of our stories are not easy to handle. It's not easy to just share your life right out there with the world. But I admire your courage. I'm so thankful that you did it, and I believe a lot of people going to watch this. They're gonna come and support what you're doing, and just want to say thank you so much. Second, and This is you have blessed me. My Friday is a lot better now when I heard your story of walking out of Islam, being in the bondage. My goodness, I can't even imagine. I'm a male. I was a man under Islam, and I know how terrible it is. I can't even imagine for women that are what they're going through as Muslims, and all the heartache. So I'm so thankful that you're out of it, and that you're here free. Thank God for the freedom that she's only found in Christ. Folks, you heard it. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you support my sister's work. Go to our YouTube channel and to our website and find her. If you want to sign up for her newsletter, make sure you do that. But you heard it. This show is called "Forsaking My Father's Religion" for a reason, because a lot of Muslims all over the world are forsaking their father's religion and coming out. And if you would like the copy of my book, go to our website iranchristians.org and fill the form. I'll be glad to send it to you. But until next, God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.